The story of being guided to Yonghua Maitreya Buddha, who came to the Saba world, receiving the prophecy of Sakyamuni Buddha. This young female Buddhist is currently more advanced in her learning of the Enlightenment than any of the monks nationwide who have become monks under Sakyamuni Buddha. At that time, when I became ill, I did not resent the monks who told me not to eat the temple food for free and to leave immediately. At that moment, my body was crippled from illness, and with death right in front of me, I was overwhelmed with joy because it was finally the chance to study the Buddhism of Sakyamuni Buddha. At that time, I had left the world and, under a great monk said to be a master, performed Chando ceremonies every day, working from 3 a.m. to 11 p.m., doing hard labor. But only after I became sick and disabled, unable to move or work anymore, did I finally get the chance to fully learn and practice the Buddhism of Sakyamuni. It was so difficult to get even one meal at the temple. I had to work the entire day just to barely earn a single meal. Even if I were to die tomorrow from illness, if I could move my body today, I had to work. Even when they told me to leave the temple immediately and return to secular life, I never left and lay down, prostrating, thinking only of the Buddha and learning the Enlightenment. When I wondered who does hard labor, I realized it was monks who do hard labor. The hardships in secular life were truly nothing compared to it. Life in a temple after becoming a monk was beyond human imagination, a continuation of extreme living that surpassed the limits of the flesh and bones. Life in the military was nothing in comparison, and it would not be an exaggeration to say it was like having 200 mothers-in-law. I left the world and became a monk because one day I heard a massive voice. That voice was like thunder crashing in midsummer, like the explosion of the universe creating heaven and earth for the first time. A sound that could never be resisted. That voice said, "Leave the world and become a monk under the Buddha, and awaken to Buddhism and teach many people." At that time, my liver had shriveled up, but when I heard that terrifying voice, I was so startled that I immediately went to Sakyamuni Buddha at Joggyesa Temple. It was my first time in my life going to a temple, but that voice was one that could never be resisted. It was absolutely irresistible. I declare emphatically, anyone who hears that voice absolutely cannot disobey it. My body moved like that on its own, as if following a path laid out in a script. Any person whatsoever who hears that voice absolutely cannot refuse it. Absolutely. At that time, hearing that voice, I resolved that I too would learn the Enlightenment like the Buddha, become enlightened, and teach what I enlightened to many people. And I sat before the Buddha in the Dharma Hall of Joggyesa Temple and made a petition. "Buddha, I will not say words asking you to forgive my sin. Some people supposedly go to the Absolute Being and ask for forgiveness from the sin they committed today. But that is an act lacking conscience and does not align with principle. I will absolutely not ask for my sin to be forgiven. If I have any sin committed in my previous life or this life, I will accept it all willingly. However, from now, having met the Buddha, I will definitely live correctly and honestly, and I will definitely become enlightened like the Buddha and let many people know what I have enlightened. I dislike earning much money, nor do I wish to meet a good person and marry. My wish is to meet a good enlightened teacher, become enlightened like the Buddha, and let many people know. Therefore, O Sakyamuni Buddha, please find an enlightened teacher for me. Nowadays is the Dharma ending age, so it is difficult to encounter the Buddha's true Dharma. Therefore, please, Sakyamuni Buddha, find an enlightened teacher for me. If it is an enlightened teacher found by the Buddha, I will believe and follow. And after petitioning, please definitely find an enlightened teacher for me, I went straight away to find out what on earth is Buddhism. To investigate this, I went to Kyobo bookstore and thoroughly searched through all the books titled Buddhist books. And I saw a book by an enlightened master great monk, full of wondrous stories, said to have the highest spiritual power of the time. And after searching for 3 months to meet the renowned enlightened master great monk of the Jogye order of Korean Buddhism, I finally met him at the end. Although he was a famous enlightened master great monk at a very large temple in the Jogye order of Korean Buddhism, I thought I would absolutely not follow unless I learned the enlightenment and had the experience myself. And so I began learning the enlightenment. He was a very famous great monk with the highest spiritual power among the monks of the Jogye order of Korean Buddhism. And just 3 months after I began learning the enlightenment in Buddhism, a truly unexpected, astonishing thing happened. I had personally embodied the state of nirvana, the extinction of all defilements spoken of by Sakyamuni Buddha. The state was very blissful, and that blissful state was the state of nirvana spoken of by Sakyamuni Buddha, where all defilements had undergone extinction. Having entered Buddhism and learned the enlightenment for just 3 months, I attained realization that the other shore spoken of by the Buddha truly exists, and I was startled. That state of nirvana, where all defilements had undergone extinction, was very blissful, peaceful, and happy, because any suffering had all disappeared and was gone, because I had actually experienced personally that the other shore spoken of by Sakyamuni Buddha exists and was continuing to live in that state, I resolved. Ah, the Buddha's words are true. I must follow in the Buddha's footsteps. I must undergo becoming a Buddhist priest. In that state, as if a thin protective barrier enveloped my body, protecting it, external objects did not enter within me, and within me too, no defilements arose. So whatever I saw, not a single thought arose. At this time, for the first time since birth, suffering disappeared. The mind was always tranquil and filled with bliss. I wondered if such a world truly existed, but upon learning the enlightenment, such a world of the other shore truly existed. It was so wondrous. The world was the same, but the world I looked upon had changed into a completely different world. It was clearly a world full of judging right and wrong and suffering. But after embracing Buddhism and learning the enlightenment, it was so tranquil and serene that defilements did not arise. And for the first time since birth, I was at peace. Although everything in the world remained the same, a completely different world unfolded before me. Since I had truly experienced the state of nirvana of the Buddha, I never wanted to return to the burning swamp of the Sabha world again. The world I had previously lived in was filled with suffering from discriminative judgment. Because the world of the other shore, as spoken by the Buddha, truly existed, I made up my mind to hold on to Sakyamuni Buddha and never let go, and to follow behind him. I decided to follow the Buddha's path, to become a Buddhist monk. When I went to enter priesthood, the head monk scolded me, saying, Someone like you becoming a monk? He shouted at me in front of many people, belittling me. But I was not angry. It was because the one shouting was the Buddha himself. Even though I was rejected, I stepped away with a grateful heart. And I did not give up. I went back 3 months later to try again. But again, the head monk shouted at me in front of many people. Meanwhile, the younger sibling who practiced with me was granted permission and entered priesthood before me under Master Doin. I looked at the monk's quarters my sibling had entered, and shortly afterward, I received my sibling's lay clothes and shoes and returned with them. My youngest sibling, who had lost our mother at the age of 6, had taken this difficult path of asceticism. I felt sorrow for that, but also relief and peace that he had entered the arms of the Buddha. The younger sibling, who used to come back from the temples, mimicking the monks, chanting, finally entered priesthood. At that time, I thought I would return in 3 months, and I left for Haeinsa in Hapcheon. When I arrived at Haeinsa, it felt just like coming home. So wonderful. There, I met monk Seong Su and the Sion monks who were practicing during the summer retreat. Monk Seong Su said that, in his view, I was destined to enter priesthood, and asked one of the senior Sion monks, who was deeply cultivated, to see if I had the karmic connection to enter. The elder monk closed his eyes for a moment, and as soon as he opened them, he said, "Ah, this young bodhisattva is truly extraordinary. This young bodhisattva has cultivated far more than any of the monks who have entered priesthood in our country today. There are tens of thousands of monks in Korea, but this young bodhisattva has cultivated the most, not just in Korea, but throughout the entire world, among all monks who follow and practice the teachings of Sakyamuni Buddha, and among all Buddhists around the globe. This young bodhisattva has cultivated more than any other disciple of Sakyamuni Buddha. In previous lives, this child practiced an incredible amount. Wow, truly amazing," he exclaimed in awe. He expressed amazement, saying that among all the disciples around the world who believe in and follow Sakyamuni Buddha, this young bodhisattva had attained the highest state of learning. Monk Seong Su and the other monks present were surprised and asked, "Ah, has this young bodhisattva really cultivated that much?" The elder monk responded in admiration, "Yes, among all Sakyamuni Buddha's disciples, this one has practiced the most. In past lives, this one has cultivated immensely." Monk Seong Su, overjoyed, continued to encourage me for days to enter priesthood at Yaksom of Haeinsa. But I said, "I have somewhere to go." When he asked, "Where are you going?" I said, "To Master Doin." Then Monk Seong Su replied, "That's a shaman. Absolutely do not go there." I smiled, because I had already realized the state of nirvana where all afflictions had vanished, and I was living in that state. Since I had already experienced it for real, there was no room for doubt. But suddenly, my hands and feet moved beyond my will, rushing toward any hermitage in Haeinsa, and I had urged to thrust my head in and ask for my head to be shaved. An enormous force was acting. It felt like my body was springing forward like a coil.